Does the Jesus of the Gospels have a God? Is that God Unitarian or Trinitarian?
Yes, so the man Jesus does have a God. That's why we see him repeatedly throughout the Gospels refer to God as his Father. He always refers to God as his Father, denoting a unique relationship he has with God. Again, this is not a problem for myself. I wholeheartedly agree with that statement because we believe that the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. So as a first century Jew, of course, Jesus worshipped the Father in spirit and in truth. However, we can't simply say that uh, that then therefore Jesus is not God because you're assuming Unitarianism. So if you're going to ask a question to me, a Trinitarian, you have to put yourself in my shoes, my position. You can't just assume that your theology is correct. You either have to go to the Bible and ask something biblically, or you assume that the incarnation is true to correctly understand my position. Again, John 17:5, where Jesus says to that he shared the glory with his Father before the world began. So there is a unique relationship Jesus has with the Father. In John chapter 5, it says that Jesus called God his own Father, therefore making himself equal with God. John writes that. So we know that John understood Jesus to be equal with God. So just because Jesus has a God as a first century Jew doesn't mean that Jesus is not God, because he had a unique relationship with the Father no one else had. And in fact, that was equality with God.
Well, actually, it means just that. If you have a God, you are not God. And by God, we keep saying these things like, well, the question is Jesus God? I think the burden of proof lies on those who want to show that Jesus is God in the ultimate sense of the word. In other words, as the only true God. Jesus nowhere is called the only God, the one God, nowhere. That phrase is never applies to Jesus. Son of God, again, I quote all these scholars, by the way, not because they're Unitarians, but because they are from the Orthodox camp. They're mostly Protestants, some of them evangelicals. Colin Brown, when he says, if you're called Son of God, it means you're not God, is as simple as that. I think the Gospels are very clear, and Jesus is very clear, even post-Gospels, post-resurrection. So this double nature thing, I don't know exactly how double nature works, because even in his post-resurrection state, as I guess Jesus goes back to being one of the persons of this multi-personal God, but even in that state, as my opponent probably knows very well, Jesus calls the Father my God. So he has a God even post double nature, or is he still double nature? Is he still speaking out of both sides of his mouth, as it were? In Revelation 3, I think at least 5 times, if you are victorious, if you succeed in your faith and you make it, you get the crown. You'll be a pillar in the temple of my God. You'll have the name of my God, the city of my God, coming from my God. Jesus has a God, which obviously should mean he is not God.